Have you ever stopped for a moment and asked yourself, what if everything you thought you knew about yourself and the world around you is just a carefully constructed illusion? Think about it. Every decision you make, every path you choose, every tiny habit you follow, are they truly yours? Or are you simply moving along patterns someone else programmed into you? You wake up every morning, brush your teeth, check your phone, scroll through social media, sip your coffee, commute to work, and follow the routine. But when do you ever pause and question why you are doing these things? Why this exact route to work? Why that exact coffee? Why those particular thoughts racing through your head? And the most haunting question, who planted them there in the first place? Imagine a world where most people are asleep, walking through life as if they are in a dream, believing they are awake, yet every movement is dictated by someone else's design. And perhaps, just perhaps, you are one of them, the sleeper. Not literally asleep, but asleep to the forces shaping your choices, your desires, your beliefs. It feels safe, doesn't it? To follow the pattern, to obey the rules without question, to blend in and avoid the chaos of thinking for yourself. But there's a cost you cannot see until you wake up. You see, real intelligence is not measured by how well you memorize facts, how much you excel in school, or how many likes you gather on social media. Real intelligence is the ability to see the currents beneath the surface, to understand who is steering the ship, and then decide, am I going to steer myself or remain a passenger forever? You might feel a twinge of discomfort reading this because deep down, part of you suspects this is true. Maybe you've always thought, I'm different, I'm independent, I think for myself. And yet, how often do you repeat phrases you've heard elsewhere? How often do you follow trends because everyone else does? How often do you buy into movements without questioning them? The truth is, awareness is painful. Waking up from the illusion requires courage. It requires admitting that much of your life, your beliefs, your choices, your very sense of self, has been guided by forces outside your control. It's a brutal awakening, but it's the first step toward genuine power, the kind that changes your life, not just superficially, but at a core, unstoppable level. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a young person named Alex, navigating the chaos of life, believing he's in control. He thinks he's making choices, yet every action is influenced by unseen forces. Alex wakes up to the realization that every decision he made, what career to pursue, who to trust, even who to date, was subtly influenced by societal expectations, friends, media, and even casual comments from people he barely remembers. And as he digs deeper, he discovers something astonishing: that intelligence is not about knowing facts. It's not about who wins debates or who graduates with honors. True intelligence is the ability to see the patterns that control others, to predict the moves of those around you, and to act in ways they never even considered. Now, imagine multiplying this awareness. Imagine realizing that most people around you, the ones you see every day, are operating at level 1 or level 2, asleep or blindly following beliefs. They are the believers, clinging to ideologies, movements, social trends, political narratives, thinking they are awake because they rejected the mainstream. But they traded one controller for another. The ideologies, the movements, the causes, They all whisper in their ears, dictating thoughts, controlling fears, shaping desires. And here you are, observing, awake, aware, standing on a threshold where you could either step forward into a realm of strategy and understanding or remain trapped in the same predictable patterns everyone else is following. The choice is yours, but it isn't easy. And that is the cruel beauty of awakening. The deeper you see, the heavier the responsibility. Pause for a moment. Think about your life as if it were a chessboard. Every piece moves according to rules, every opponent anticipates moves, and every game is played simultaneously on multiple layers. Now ask yourself, which piece am I? Are you the pawn, moving exactly as instructed, never questioning the strategy? Or are you the knight, capable of moves others can't anticipate, of thinking several steps ahead? Most people never reach the higher levels. They spend their lives reacting, copying, performing, never once stopping to ask if any of it is real. And if you are reading this, you've already crossed a threshold most will never even see. That's the power of curiosity, of self-awareness, of asking the uncomfortable questions that others avoid. It's thrilling, it's terrifying, and it's addictive. Here's the reality: waking up, becoming aware is just the beginning. Because awareness alone doesn't protect you. Understanding the patterns, the hierarchies, the psychology of people, that's powerful. But to use that power, you must act. And action is where most falter. They see, they understand, they theorize, but they never take the steps that would elevate them above the pack. They cling to comfort, to routine, to consensus. They avoid risk. They avoid confrontation. And so they remain invisible, compliant, powerless. You, however, can be different. You can learn the rules, predict the plays, and act with precision. You can operate not from emotion, but from strategy. You can see what others are blind to, anticipate their moves, and claim victories they never imagined. But it requires courage and the willingness to stand alone. Once you awaken to the patterns controlling others, a new world opens before you, a world that is both exhilarating and terrifying. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is speaking, moving, reacting, yet all of them are following scripts they don't even realize exist. And there you are, awake, aware, a rare observer of the invisible threads that pull and twist the lives of those around you. This is where the real challenge begins. The first revelation is simple, yet profoundly unsettling. Most people are not acting out of choice. They are acting out of programming. Their beliefs, their decisions, their emotions, they are all manipulated, reinforced, guided by external forces they cannot see. And yet they think they are free. They are not. Freedom, real freedom, comes only when you identify the forces at play and choose to move independently, with purpose, with foresight. As you step deeper into this understanding, you start noticing subtleties everywhere. The conversations you hear, the news you read, the advertisements you see, they are not neutral. They are designed to evoke emotion, to trigger reaction, to steer you without your consent. The words you read are carefully chosen to resonate with your subconscious fears and desires. Every image, every headline, every trending topic is a mechanism, a tool, a lever designed to influence behavior. And most people walk straight into it, blind and compliant. But you, with awareness sharpening your perception, begin to spot the mechanics behind the facade. You see the nudges, the cues, the invisible hands that guide the masses. And with this knowledge comes power, the kind of power that doesn't announce itself but quietly shapes outcomes, silently orchestrating events without drawing attention. And yet, awareness is not enough. Knowledge without action is like holding a sword and refusing to wield it. You must learn to move with intention, to operate strategically, to influence outcomes without being noticed. The world is full of mimics, people who appear intelligent, who quote philosophers, who memorize concepts, who use complex language to impress. Yet when tested under pressure, they fail to produce results. They look the part, they sound the part, but substance is absent. The mimic thrives in environments that reward performance over outcome, applause over effectiveness. And you, awake and aware, must rise above this level. You must prioritize real results over the illusion of intelligence. You must cultivate skills that matter, strategies that work, and insight that anticipates challenges before they appear. Now, imagine the social dynamics that unfold when you move beyond awareness and performance into true influence. You begin to see the believers, the ones who have adopted ideologies, movements, or causes as a substitute for thinking. They feel righteous, morally superior, committed to their cause, yet they are blind to the manipulation around them. They follow the leaders of their chosen movements as faithfully as sleepers follow authority. And when confronted with alternative perspectives, they react with aggression, defensiveness, and rigid adherence to their beliefs. You recognize them instantly because you are no longer bound by the scripts they follow. You understand their motivations, their fears, their limitations. And this is your advantage, the ability to see clearly while others remain lost in the fog of programmed conviction. But with clarity comes responsibility. The more you observe, the more you realize the stakes are higher than you imagined. You are not merely watching life unfold. You are now capable of shaping it. The decisions you make, the influence you exert, the actions you take, these have consequences that ripple far beyond your immediate perception. Strategy becomes a necessity, foresight a daily habit. You begin to map the environment like a chessboard, identifying leverage points, potential threats, allies, and opportunities. You learn to act not impulsively, but with calculated precision, weighing outcomes, anticipating reactions, and planning contingencies. Every move becomes deliberate, every interaction an opportunity, every observation a data point. And in this process, you start transforming yourself into a calculator, someone who not only understands what is happening, but predicts what will happen and positions themselves advantageously. And yet, the world is not static. As you rise in awareness and ability, new challenges emerge. You encounter the operators, the ones who act boldly, command visibility, and exert influence through force of will. They are powerful, visible, commanding respect, even fear. But visibility has its limitations. The more obvious their power, the more targets they attract, the more energy they expend maintaining control. And this is where strategy surpasses brute force. The most effective individuals, the ones who operate with subtlety, influence, and precision, understand the limitations of visible power. They move behind the scenes, shaping outcomes without announcing themselves, guiding events as a puppeteer shapes marionettes, unseen yet undeniably effective. They learn to control desire, expectation, and perception, manipulating not through coercion, but through influence so natural that compliance feels like choice. As you study these dynamics, you realize that mastery of influence requires empathy, observation, and emotional intelligence. Understanding people is not just about strategy. It is about perception, reading subtle cues, sensing shifts in tone, body language, and intention. You must cultivate the ability to detect deception, anticipate resistance, and identify opportunities in chaos. You learn that fear, desire, pride, and insecurity are the levers that move people. And when you understand these, you can guide them effortlessly. But there is a cost. This level of awareness, this strategic engagement is draining. Every interaction requires attention, every decision carries weight, and the mental load is immense. Many fail here not because they lack knowledge, but because they cannot sustain the intensity. True influence requires stamina, focus, and unyielding resolve. Once you reach the level where observation and awareness intersect, a new dimension of understanding unfolds. You begin to notice the invisible currents that guide human behavior, the subtle nudges that direct choices, the unspoken rules that govern interactions. It's almost like stepping into a hidden room where the walls are lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different aspect of reality that others cannot see. And in this room, you realize how rare your perspective truly is. Most people wander blindly, reacting impulsively, believing they are autonomous while every thought and emotion is influenced, manipulated, and guided. And yet, here you are, awake, aware, a navigator of unseen forces, a strategist of outcomes yet to be realized. The more you perceive, the more responsibility you carry. Knowledge is no longer passive, it demands action. The insights you gather, the patterns you recognize, and the strategies you develop all carry weight. You understand that life is a complex system of cause and effect, where every decision triggers ripples that extend far beyond the immediate horizon. And this is where the true challenge begins. To act effectively without revealing your hand, to influence outcomes without drawing attention, to shape perception while remaining unseen. You start operating like a puppeteer, guiding people subtly, making them feel as though the choices are theirs while you orchestrate the results. This is a delicate balance, requiring mastery of psychology, perception, and timing. As your understanding deepens, you begin to differentiate between real intelligence and performed intelligence. Real intelligence is silent, understated, strategic, and results-oriented. Performed intelligence, on the other hand, is loud, attention-seeking, and designed to impress. The mimics and performers dominate social spaces, using complex language, philosophical quotes, and impressive gestures to create the illusion of depth. But under pressure, when genuine problem-solving is required, they falter. They cannot think dynamically, cannot adapt quickly, cannot create solutions from scratch. They only repeat what they've memorized. And this is your advantage. Awareness allows you to see past the performance, to identify genuine skill, competence, and foresight. At this stage, the social dynamics around you change dramatically. You notice the believers, those who have adopted ideologies as substitutes for thought. They are fervent, convinced, morally righteous, yet blind to the manipulation that surrounds them. They are warriors for causes they barely understand, soldiers in battles that are not theirs. When confronted with differing perspectives, they react aggressively, emotionally, predictably. And you, awake and aware, see this clearly. You recognize the patterns, the triggers, the predictable reactions. This allows you to navigate social landscapes with precision, choosing when to engage, when to observe, and when to withdraw. Your influence grows not through loud declarations or visible power, but through subtle guidance, careful timing, and deep understanding. The next challenge is mastering invisible power, the ability to shape outcomes without being noticed. Visible power, like that of operators and leaders who act boldly and command attention, comes with risks. They attract opposition, scrutiny, and energy-draining conflict. The true masters, however, operate from the shadows. They influence desires, perceptions, and decisions without overt commands. They craft environments where compliance feels voluntary, where people move as if by choice, while in reality, they are guided by unseen hands. The puppeteer understands timing, emotional triggers, and subtle manipulation to achieve outcomes effortlessly. But this requires empathy, perception, and psychological acuity. You must sense intentions, recognize vulnerabilities, and guide interactions carefully. Misjudgment can have consequences, making precision critical. Furthermore, you learn that the most effective influence comes from understanding emotions. Fear, desire, pride, insecurity, ambition. These are the levers that move people. By perceiving and responding to these, you gain a level of control over situations previously unimaginable. Yet the cost of operating at this level is high. Every interaction demands focus, every decision carries weight, and mental and emotional stamina becomes crucial. Most fail because they underestimate the intensity required. True mastery is not about knowledge alone. It is about the consistent, deliberate application of insight, strategy, and emotional intelligence. You must maintain clarity under pressure, anticipate resistance, and guide outcomes while remaining undetected. And finally, the journey reveals a sobering truth. With great awareness and influence comes isolation. Few can understand the perspective you hold. Many are still trapped in their programmed patterns, reacting without thought, obeying without question, performing without substance. You become a silent observer, a strategist, a puppeteer, aware of how every action and interaction fits into a larger framework. Relationships, alliances, negotiations, conflicts, they all become part of a broader chessboard where each piece has purpose, each move has consequence. And in this understanding, you grasp the delicate interplay between power, influence, and responsibility. To operate effectively, you must balance action with subtlety, impact with invisibility, and control with empathy. As you advance beyond the puppeteer stage, you enter a realm where subtlety becomes your greatest weapon. You realize that overt actions, commands, and displays of power are temporary. They attract attention, invite opposition, and create friction. The world rewards perception more than presence, influence more than visibility. You start thinking in layers. Every conversation, every decision, every interaction is a microcosm of larger forces at play. You understand the invisible architecture that shapes outcomes, the psychological patterns that govern choices, the social currents that direct behavior. And with this understanding comes a profound responsibility, to act with precision, patience, and purpose. You learn that timing is everything. One premature move can unravel a carefully orchestrated plan, while a perfectly timed intervention can shift entire trajectories in your favor. In this realm, relationships transform from casual interactions into strategic connections. Each person becomes a node of influence, a potential lever, a source of insight. You notice the subtle signs, tone of voice, body language, microexpressions, that reveal intent and hidden emotions. You learn to guide outcomes by shaping perception rather than issuing orders. People begin to move in the direction you intend, unaware that they are being guided because the guidance feels organic, voluntary, inevitable. The power of suggestion becomes your greatest ally. A well-placed question, a carefully framed comment, or a subtle gesture can redirect behavior, alter decisions, and shape beliefs. And you, fully aware of the mechanism, operate like a conductor leading a symphony, each note intentional, each pause deliberate, each crescendo impactful. Yet the mastery of invisible influence is not without cost. The mental and emotional stamina required is immense. You must remain vigilant, processing layers of information simultaneously, predicting reactions, calculating consequences, and managing perception. One lapse, one misjudgment, can compromise the delicate equilibrium you maintain. Most people fail to comprehend the intensity this demands. They see only the results, the outcomes, the apparent control, without understanding the unseen labor, the calculated foresight, and the constant vigilance required. And here lies the paradox. The more skilled you become at shaping outcomes without detection, the lonelier the path becomes. True influence often requires working in shadows, where recognition is minimal and applause is irrelevant. You trade visibility for effectiveness, and in doing so, you move farther away from conventional validation, but closer to true mastery. At this level, you begin to see the limitations of conventional morality. While most people are guided by notions of right and wrong, fairness and societal approval, you understand that outcomes, consequences, and effectiveness are what truly matter. The world does not reward intention, it rewards impact. And impact requires understanding, foresight, and strategic execution. You learn to detach from emotional biases, to evaluate situations based on objective leverage rather than sentiment. This does not mean you abandon ethics. Rather, you recognize that rigid moral frameworks often constrain action and obscure clarity. Flexibility, adaptability, and situational awareness become essential tools. You operate with precision, selecting the most effective course of action, even when it challenges conventional norms, because true influence and lasting results are the currency of power. The next step is mastering perception itself. People see only what you allow them to see, interpret only what you frame, and believe only what you suggest. You understand that perception shapes reality as much as action does. By guiding perception, you guide behavior. You craft environments where decisions feel inevitable, where choices appear voluntary, where alignment feels natural. Influence becomes seamless, invisible, irresistible. And yet mastery requires restraint, subtlety, patience, and psychological acumen. Overstep and the illusion collapses, move with care and outcomes unfold as though by natural course. You operate with the wisdom of a chess grandmaster, anticipating multiple moves ahead, aware of contingencies, prepared for resistance, ready to adjust strategy instantaneously. This is the art of the unseen architect, the strategist who builds reality itself rather than merely navigating it. Emotions, both yours and others, are the true currency at this stage. Fear, desire, envy, pride, hope. They are not obstacles but tools, indicators, levers. By understanding and subtly guiding emotional currents, you amplify your influence without overt force. You learn to create anticipation, tension, and relief, crafting moments that elicit responses aligned with your objectives. Your decisions are calculated yet humane. Your influence is strategic yet seemingly organic. And as mastery deepens, every action, every interaction, every word becomes part of a carefully constructed narrative. A narrative that guides, persuades, and shapes outcomes. The difference between a competent operator and a master is not effort. It is subtlety, insight, and the ability to orchestrate complexity invisibly. You become the quiet engine driving outcomes while the world continues, unaware, thinking it is acting freely. As you progress beyond the puppeteer, you enter a realm where mastery is measured not by force, not by visibility, but by the subtle orchestration of events, choices, and perception. Here, every interaction is a canvas, every conversation a brushstroke, every decision a piece of a larger masterpiece. You understand that the most effective influence is invisible. People act in accordance with your guidance, yet believe they are acting freely. This invisible control is not coercion. It is the art of shaping desire, aligning incentives, and creating conditions where outcomes naturally unfold in your favor. The world responds not to power, but to the impression of inevitability, to the subtle cues that direct behavior without the need for overt commands. You begin to see patterns in chaos, order in disorder, and opportunities in situations where others see only obstacles. At this stage, you develop an acute awareness of human psychology. Every fear, hope, aspiration, and bias becomes a map to navigate reality. You notice microexpressions, vocal inflections, and body language, each revealing hidden motivations and unspoken intentions. By observing carefully, you predict reactions, anticipate resistance, and guide behavior with precision. Influence becomes less about persuasion and more about alignment, aligning the objectives of others with your own, in ways that feel natural, voluntary, and inevitable. Each person becomes a node, each interaction a network, each outcome a reflection of carefully applied insight. The art of subtlety is paramount. The most effective guidance leaves no trace, yet produces results as if by magic. And in this, you understand the profound responsibility of knowledge, insight, and foresight. Yet mastery at this level requires more than awareness. It demands resilience, patience, and discipline. The mental and emotional load is immense. You must constantly evaluate, predict, and adjust. One misstep, one overlooked nuance can unravel careful strategies. And yet the reward is unmatched. The ability to shape reality without resistance, to orchestrate events invisibly, and to achieve outcomes that seem impossible to outsiders. You begin to understand the difference between action and consequence, between initiative and influence. True effectiveness comes not from doing more, but from doing with insight, precision, and strategic clarity. Every move, every word, every pause carries weight. You operate like a conductor leading a symphony of human behavior, each note intentional, each rest deliberate, each crescendo impactful. At this level, morality and ethics are no longer simple guides. They are tools, instruments to navigate complex landscapes. You recognize that rigid frameworks limit flexibility and obscure clarity. The most effective strategists adapt moral constructs to maximize outcomes while minimizing unnecessary conflict. You learn to balance consequence and perception, fairness and pragmatism, long-term vision and short-term necessity. Every choice is weighed for impact, every interaction measured for leverage, every decision calibrated for alignment with overarching objectives. Emotional intelligence becomes a currency as valuable as logic, foresight, or strategy. You understand that influence without empathy can lead to miscalculations, resistance, or collapse. And so, you develop the ability to read not only actions, but intentions, fears, and aspirations, integrating them into a coherent strategy for success. You also begin to comprehend the fluidity of power itself. Visibility, authority, and control are transient. Influence is enduring. Leaders who rely solely on overt power may achieve immediate results, but those who master the subtle levers of human behavior shape long-term outcomes. The world is a complex network of systems, incentives, and perceptions. By understanding these dynamics, you move from reactive decision-making to proactive orchestration. You create environments where choices naturally align with your objectives, where resistance dissolves into cooperation, where outcomes unfold with seeming inevitability. This is the domain of true strategists, the ones who operate in shadows, unseen but undeniable, shaping realities, while others are distracted by appearances, drama, or convention. Emotions remain the ultimate currency. Fear, desire, ambition, envy, pride, they are not obstacles but levers. By understanding emotional currents, you can guide, motivate, and influence in ways that feel natural to those affected. Strategic timing, subtle suggestion, and psychological insight allow you to move individuals and groups toward objectives without overt commands. Influence becomes an art of harmony, aligning motivations, perceptions, and actions into a cohesive pattern that delivers outcomes seamlessly. You begin to craft environments that elicit specific responses, shape behavior, and guide choices, all while maintaining the illusion of freedom and autonomy. The result is a mastery of influence that transcends authority, coercion, or visibility, creating a reality shaped by insight, foresight, and deliberate orchestration. Finally, the pinnacle of this stage is understanding the long game. Short-term victories are meaningless without strategic foresight. The most effective operators plan across months, years, and decades. Every relationship, interaction, and decision is considered within the context of long-term outcomes. They understand that influence, perception, and control must be maintained continuously, with subtle adjustments, constant observation, and adaptive strategies. Patience, restraint, and calculated risk-taking define the expert strategist. You see not just the immediate outcome, but the cascade of consequences, the interlocking effects, the emergent patterns that govern systems. By mastering this, you operate at a level where change is not imposed. It is orchestrated, inevitable, and enduring. You become a force that shapes reality itself, unseen yet undeniable, subtle yet transformative, quiet yet supremely effective. You're standing at the edge of your own life, looking around at the paths you've chosen, the decisions you've made.
This is it, gentlemen. Our fortunes are set. Agreed. Let's seal it with a toast.
You feel a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, because deep down, you know that everything you've ever been taught about success, intelligence, and control has been a carefully constructed illusion. You've been told that following instructions, memorizing facts, and playing by the rules is the way to rise. And for years, you believed it. You worked hard, obeyed authority, and conformed to patterns you didn't even realize were programmed into your very being. And now you can feel the weight of that obedience pressing down on you, heavy and suffocating, because real intelligence isn't obedience wrapped in certificates or applause. It's the ability to see beyond the surface, to understand the currents moving under the calm waters that everyone else mistakes for normality. Every conversation you've had, every person you've met, every headline you've read has been part of a story you didn't write. And you've been performing on a stage you didn't even know existed, mimicking reactions, repeating opinions, wearing masks that hide the real you from yourself. And the realization of this makes your heart race and your stomach twist. Because once you see how easily people are manipulated, controlled, and used, you can't unsee it. And you start questioning everything. The morals you were taught, the beliefs you inherited, the ambitions you chased. and it terrifies
This is it,
you,
gentlemen.
yet it's
Our
intoxicating
fortunes
because
are
with
set.
awareness comes
Agreed.
freedom.
Let's
a
seal it
freedom
with a
that
toast.
demands courage. Because to act on the clarity you've gained requires sacrifices. It requires breaking parts of yourself, letting go of validation, applause, and the comforting illusions of belonging. And you feel a tension,
Gentlemen,
between
consider
staying
the
in the
implications
warm,
of this
predictable
discovery in
slumber
relation
of
to the
masses,
architectural
or
styles
stepping
of the
forward
period.
into the cold, exhilarating clarity of real influence. You can feel your mind expanding, firing with questions that have no easy answers. And it's overwhelming because every instinct that once comforted you now seems like a trap. And you begin to see the world for what it truly is. A hierarchy of power, influence, and hidden agendas where morality is optional. Obedience is currency and understanding is survival. And in this revelation, you feel both small and infinite, because knowing how the game is played gives you a chance to play it differently. But it also reminds you how easily a misstep can cost you everything. And yet, despite the fear, there's a thrill, a spark of excitement in realizing that most people will never wake up, never see the structures controlling their thoughts and desires, never understand that they are participants in a story written by others.
Consider the implications
awake,
of this discovery
aware,
in relation to the
trembling on the edge
architectural
of
styles of the
possibility,
period.
and you feel a mixture of sadness for the sleepers, for the believers, for the mimics who will never move beyond their programmed responses, but also determination, because now you understand that power, influence, and real intelligence are yours to claim if you dare to act. And as you take this knowledge in, let it burn inside you. Let it drive every choice, every action, and every interaction. And remember, most will watch this video and walk away unchanged. But you, the one who stayed, the one who listened, the one who felt, you have a chance to be different, to rise above, to become the player who shapes the game rather than a pawn in someone else's. So pause, reflect, and ask yourself, are you ready to act? Are you ready to step into the uncomfortable truth? Are you ready to confront your fears and claim the life you were meant to live? And if you are, then subscribe, because we're just getting started.
This is it, gentlemen.
And the path
Our
ahead will
fortunes are
challenge
set.
you, push
Agreed.
you,
Let's
and
seal it with a
transform
toast.
you in ways you never imagined. And the journey won't be easy. It will demand your courage, your focus, your relentless pursuit of understanding. But in the end, it will make you unstoppable, unshakable, and finally free. And if you take one thing from this, let it be this. Control reality. Don't let reality control you, and every day, make a choice that moves you closer to the life you truly deserve. Because the world isn't waiting, the game isn't pausing, and the question isn't whether you'll rise, but whether you'll choose to rise, and now it's your turn.